Welcome to another episode of Origins, a Creative Journey. Today, we are honored to have with us Brian Flynn of Super7. Thank you so much for being here, Brian.
No, thanks for having me.
We have so much ground to cover here. Please share with us your origin story, your creative journey. How did you get to where you are today?
I grew up in the military. Not, let me back up. My dad was in the military and I grew up so in the military. And so we bounced around every 3 years. But for the most part, we were in Texas. Kid growing up, discovered skateboarding and punk rock. I could back it up. I discovered heavy metal first before you discover punk rock because you got to work your way in. You got to start with the gateway drug, then you get a little more. And next thing you know, it's black tar heroin. You start out with your Daryl Hall and John Oates, then you get your Aldo Nova Fantasies and your Styx Mixter Roboto. Then you work your way up to Def Leppard. Then you're into Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. And then you hear Motorhead. And next thing you know, it's, Minor Threat and JFA and the Faction and the big boys. And it's all downhill from there. Anyway, so probably the first time you get recognized as an artist is in junior high when somebody wants you to draw the Iron Maiden logo or Eddie on their notebook. That's going to be my origin story, is drawing Eddie or Iron Maiden on people's notebooks. But I think what's important there is what you don't realize at the time, and I didn't realize till much later, is you're working on branding. Replicating a logo is literally branding and hand skills and type skills and the interplay of calligraphy. And mascot is part of their branding and part of the identity and storytelling of the brand. It's kind of corny, but that's really what it was. And so how I did it is I leveled up into then in your high school. I know at some point I'm probably going to go to art school for college, but I know I'm not going to be a painter. What I'm doing all day long is learning how to draw by retracing skateboard graphics. Still, I have them in the garage. I have pages and pages, like notebooks full of me redrawing Pusshead's artwork as, my versions of it, going from really bad to somewhat better. VCJ's artwork, Jim Phillips artwork, stuff that I would see on record covers, as well as logos for bands and stuff. And then along the way, you start to be that guy that draws your friend's band's flyers or makes a record cover for your friend's bands, their demo tapes. I remember taking a graphic arts class in high school because I wasn't really great in the arts class. And, it was the same thing. It was like, oh, make an alphabet? I can make an alphabet. I think I drew my alphabet was broken Q-tips. And that's how I made an alphabet. And, we made t-shirts for my friend's band and I mocked up the demo tape for his band. And no one ever tells you that that's a job, that that's a thing. So I go to art school. At that same time, I got a job at Kinko's and I would help people like paste stuff up and photocopy it for them and bind it or whatever. And I learned how to run a one-color printer and I knew how to silk screen. I go to college and you're sort of going through your first year of art school classes, and my grandma of all people was just like, you should take what they used to call commercial art. You just take a commercial art class just so you have something to fall back on. And I went into my commercial art class and they're like, all right, we need you to draw a logo, make a t-shirt, make a brochure, and this. I'm like, I know how to do all this shit. I've been doing this shit for years. So you don't realize that all that stuff growing up in my world, that was actually a career this whole time. Like what I'm doing for all my friends and what I'm doing for my friends, redrawing skateboard logos or making a t-shirt for your buddy that looks like the COC logo or whatever. All of that is, graphic design, what we call graphic design these days. And so once I was like, oh, that's graphic design, then it was like, I went from being like, I have no idea what I'm going to do in art school to like, you are the star pupil. We kind of thing, because it was just like, oh, this is easy. I've been paying attention to this since I was in junior high. Like, I know what this is. Oh, you've got a new band? Well, you would need a custom logo and typeface. Well, that would mean that we'd have to create that, like all those kind of things. So long story short, which I've already gone very circuitously and non-linearly through this, where I'm trying to even remember it, is that I end up graduating college with a degree in graphic design. At the same time, during our college experience, a bunch of us, after my sophomore year, we all went home for the summer, a bunch of different friends that were at school, all of us during the course of the summer were like, you know what I do? I want my Star Wars toys again. And we all started going to flea markets and stuff. So this would have been the summer 91. We all started buying and looking for our old toys again. And we all showed up back at school and we'd all done the same thing. It was so weird. So in at the same time, while you're sort of living on $5 a week at college, trying to figure out what's going on, you're also like, but I got to save $2 to go to the flea market and find some Star Wars toys for a quarter each. I started collecting toys again, and I had always collected the whole time. Like growing up as a kid, I collected baseball cards and I collected comic books, but you never really thought about it that way. It was just something you liked to have. It was never a business, if you will. And so I graduated in December of 93 from the University of North Texas with a degree in graphic design. I immediately got a job in January working at Fossil Watches. I was employee number 7 in the art department at Fossil Watches when they were just starting up, which was great. And I just got thrown straight into product. You know, my first project ever was making spiral notebooks. And then my second project was a limited edition Felix watch with like a ceramic figure that held a pocket watch. But it was like none of that is graphic design. That's product design. But it's the exact same thinking. It's just translating it to material versus on the printed page. It's still visual hierarchy. Where does the eye go first? What does it go here? What is the function? How do these things relate? What do they look like together? What story are you trying to tell? Are the embellishments adding to the story? Are they taking away from the story? All those kind of things. So I worked there for 15 months and was headhunted out of there to go to Nike. And then I worked at Nike from 95 to 2000. Started at Nike in the apparel design department. So I was doing t-shirts. The first thing I did there was a t-shirt for Alonzo Mourning. And the second or third thing I did was working on the MLS jerseys for the launch of that league. And I actually did the league logo as well as named the Dallas Burn because it was just sort of like, somebody needs to do this. I was in the creative space. I like to draw. I like to do all this other stuff. I like comic books, but I never really knew what I was going to do. I just like to draw. It wasn't till a little bit later on that, you really start thinking, by the time you get into sort of like high school years, you're like, oh, what am I going to do? And basically at that time, you got spare time, work on it. At that time, actually, I worked with a guy named Drew Greer, who does not get his flowers and should. And we brought, or not, I say we, I'm going to say he. Drew brought back the Air Force One in 1996. So everything you see downstream now, Drew brought back the Air Force One. He brought back the Air Force 95. He brought back the Dunk. All of that was done by Drew Greer. And I would do his graphic design work for him, but it was all him. So that little double thing that you see on the bottom of the laces, I made that. But I made it because Drew came up with the idea from a handbag from Coach. They had it on a strap, and he was like, this is really cool, levels it up, says luxury, we need to put that on Air Force One. So he invented the whole game of retro sneakers, but that's another story. So I did that. I worked in apparel for like 2 years. I got one shoe out trying to work my way into footwear. It didn't quite work. I got one shoe design done. And then I went over and I designed Nike Towns for like 2 years. So I would design the entire thing, sections of it. They'd give me like the running pavilion. So I would design all the graphics, all that, but I would also design all the furniture, all the displays, the seating, the terrazzo on the floors, everything, all of it. And same thing. I had no training in any of that, but it's all the same thinking. Like, okay, if I'm talking about going back to 16 years old, here's my friend's punk band. What's your name? What's your point of view? What's the story? How do we look like? What's our visual image? Oh, I'm in a running pavilion. What's the story we're trying to do? The one that we did in Berlin was all about aerodynamics. The whole point of running is moving through the air with as little resistance as possible. So everything was very aerodynamic, sort of blanking on his name right now. Big aerodynamic designer of the 20s and 30s, but everything looked streamlined basically. So it's all like the terrazzo on the floor matches how the pylons and the columns, like how the benches go, how we show the shoes. You're always telling a story, no matter what you do visually. We left Nike in 95 and I mean in 2000 and moved to San Francisco and opened up our own design studio, Hybrid Design, because I wanted to be in San Francisco. I had no idea this was Silicon Valley because I'm not from California. I thought Silicon Valley was someplace with sand that was out by Fresno. Turns out I was incorrect. And I moved into the middle of the belly of the beast, right at the height. Luckily, it crashed in 2001, and all of a sudden it was affordable and I could stay here. And at the same time of starting the studio, we retained Nike as a client, but we weren't busy the whole time. So I used that opportunity to launch Super7 in 2001. Predating Super7, when I moved to San Francisco, I worked with some friends of mine, namely Jimbo Madison and Mark Nagata, to put together a book for Chronicle called So Crazy Japanese Toys. And when we were done with it, Chronicle wanted a sequel. I was unwilling to put in the time it took to make another book, but I said, oh, why don't we make a magazine? I can make it like an old punk rock fanzine, except that I could do the digital pre-press on my own. It was the advent of digital photography, so I didn't have to hire photographers. So I could make it look like a regular magazine, even though it was basically a zine. And we never expected it to be anything of merit because who's going to want to read a magazine about Japanese toys? There's like 12 of us. So we approached it from the same exact point of view when we did photocopied zines when we were in high school. It was, all right, for us to print 5,000 copies, it's going to cost $5,000. Can we find 12 people to take out a $250 ad? That's $3,000. That leaves me $2,000. That means if it's $5 a magazine, if I can sell 400 magazines, we break even. We get the magazine for free. We have the money to make the next one. That was the goal. And to our surprise, the magazine performed better than we expected. And that was sort of the beginning of everything that leads up into sort of what most people know me for today. But the reality is Super7 was, while we had opened the store in 2003 and we had some people that worked here full time, I actually didn't work full time at Super7 think till 2016 or 2017. So for the first 15, 16 years of Super7, my full-time job was still the design studio and I'd work on Super7. I've talked a lot that was probably not meant to be your design journey, but that was a lot just to get to the entry point of what people know now. So I'm going to take a moment. Everybody can breathe, resign themselves. If you're listening online right now, this is a great time to jettison this whole thing and move on. Like this is a great time to like switch lanes, punch up on your phone when there's no traffic and move on to another podcast because it's only going to get worse.
You mean better. And don't worry, Brian, we've had guests whose origin story has been a 40-minute full shot, so you're doing great. You are doing great. No, thank you for sharing. This is actually really fascinating to me because I love your articulation of how design thinking is the same, even though the actual discipline might be different of, toys versus product versus experiential design, stores, right, to even things like graphic design, flat images, et cetera, et cetera. And it's still, I think this idea of always telling a story is so, one, something that Chris and I really resonate with, and two, something that I think a lot of creatives and aspiring creatives can really get behind. And so one thing I did want to dive into a little bit more was you mentioned the way you're thinking about even your friend's punk band at an early age was still very much, around this idea of design thinking of who's it for, what story are you trying to tell? I know at least myself, when I was at that age, I was just trying to make it look cool. And I had no concept of like, oh, what's the storytelling? What's, the branding, etc. Is that something that was you just developed yourself doing that number of repetitions, or did a teacher tell you, or like how did you pick up on that early on?
I don't think I probably could have articulated it at that time, but I can look back and see that I very clearly understood it. And I might be able to phrase it in smaller ways. It depends on how well versed you are into subcultures within punk. But like if you put out a record in 1987, or let's use 1988 because it's a better year for it. If in 1988 you put a record that has athletic font across the front, everybody knows that's a new school straight edge record. If it's got an avant-garde photo with some very minimal, beautifully done type, you know that came from Discord, second wave of Discord. If you have a scratchy letter type on it, you know that's a crusty punk band. And if you know it's got like the ransom note shit, you know it's terrible because it's that shit went out, in 19 fucking 77. Like it's just trash and no one wants it anyways. So even already, you know that the visual language that you're putting together is conveying something to the customer you're buying, even within this minor subculture. So you pay attention really quickly because it's like, oh, this is my friend's hardcore band, or like I did. Somebody can look it up. You can look up the Slap of Reality Time Alone 7-inch. They are sort of right when hardcore was slightly becoming post-hardcore and emo wasn't really there, but sort of not really. And they were really trying to be more like Discord, more like what they heard, like Embrace was a really big influence for those guys. So that cover looks like that because that's what we're trying to do. And that's the road we're trying to go down, where if that same 7-inch had come out on, say, Jello Biafra's label or on Revelation, it would have looked radically different because there's a point of view to the graphics and there's a thing. So, like at the time, I probably could not have broken it down as well as I am now. But we were very clearly trying to do that. Like, oh, what's the feeling this person who has no idea what the music sounds like going to be when they pick up this record? And are they going to understand that if they're looking for this, that I'm part of it? Does that make any sense?
I'm over here laughing because I used to work in the music industry, and it's a perfect example. Like when you look at something, it just fits, and a lot of people don't realize it, right?
Yeah, like I mean, if people
You and
look
I
at all these
realize it.
classic records and they're like, "Oh, Dark Side of the Moon," like whatever, and it's like, well, why does that work? If you had put that same record cover, but it was a Juice Newton record under it, it would not have worked. But it works with Pink Floyd, and we're trying to talk about these heady concepts and some other this other stuff, and it's like, oh, we're taking something and splitting it apart into disparate elements. It's like, oh, you can get like there's story in there and it's appropriateness. It's not just this, but at the same time, to be fair, to back what you were saying earlier, at the same time, we're also like, and this look fuck cool. And that's always the sort of thing. It's like if you get too caught up in concept and you lose the aesthetics, then you lose the vitality of what you're trying or the engagement of the viewer. So it's always that balance of making sure the story is there versus making sure aesthetics are still there. And it's that thing for young designers, especially. I always talk about this with young designers is usually we get so caught up in the style and we're so proud of ourselves of look what we've done. And we've made this thing and it's got this wonderful curly cue that's just perfectly arced and moves over the side over here and this thing's swinging up the top left corner and it's stunning. And it's like, yes, but this is for something, it's just like all of that becomes visual noise. It's not communicating anymore. And in doing so, it actually makes it harder for you to understand the message I'm getting. So as you get to be an older designer, that's where you get into that editing process, which is like, I'm proud of this, but I got to strip this off here because it's unnecessary. And you get to that point where you strip everything off of it till it's like, what's the least amount of stuff I can leave on the page and communicate? That is the most effective way.
It's telling a story the right, which is what design thinking is. You're hitting it. You're trying to tell a story, and the best stories are simple. To your point with this curlicue, you got to eliminate crap to make it clean. Look at your, by the way, something, work at Microsoft. My customer for 2 years was MLS, and I did more stuff with your logo than you could possibly imagine.
If it's
So
the
that's the
shield,
coolest.
that's the revised logo.
No, the original.
The original
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But the original one, it's another example. It's like, is it the most well-designed, beautiful thing? Not necessarily, but their whole point was we're trying to be legitimate. We need you to understand that we're valid. And so therefore, I need to have something that looks like it came downstream from MLB and NBA as well as hockey. So if it fits in with those, it gets us a sense of legitimacy that we may not have with your average customer.
I had a fight with one of my bosses when I worked at Warner Music Group, and she was a woman. And we had started a new hip hop label. So I said, okay, great, hip hop, that's too general. What is it? And they're like, what do you mean? I go, well, is it Will Smith or is it like the N word in every other sentence? Like, what is it? And the guy was like, oh, it's the later. So I designed this thing, and their logo was literally the silhouette of a naked chick She wasn't naked because it was just a silhouette on this. And she was like, that's wrong. It won't fit. We're a corporation. And I'm like, okay, let's go have your boy, because she had her boy, let him design something. And the guys were like, oh, we want this one. And she was like, it's offensive. And they're like, yeah, have you not listened to what the fucking music is? Like, what's the story you're trying to tell? And I think a lot of people miss that with design thinking. And
I'm going to go two prongs on that. There's two things, which is one, it's not about you, but at the same time, the reason they come to you is what you bring to it. So there's that, which is an apparent dichotomy and contradiction. But what I always say is you have to love the work, but you can't be in love with the work. So you have to love what you're doing and be into it. But if you're so in love with it that you can't change it or tweak it or throw it away, then you're not in the right place. So really, it's about that same thing, which is ideally, if you're doing it right, the reason people come to you is that you have a point of view that they think intersects with what you're doing. But at the same time, it's not about you, it's about them. So your take on them where you are invisible and it is correct for them is the perfect solution. And all of us will sit there and be like, oh, but I like this guy's monograph, and it's like, I like Peter Saville as much as the next guy, and I can see his work a mile away. But unless you want Peter Saville, that happens to be for New Order, you're hiring an artist. He may be a graphic designer, but you're getting an artist. Like if you hire Dave McKean, you're getting Dave McKean, and it's not necessarily about you. So the designer, usually the role is flipped, you can say, oh, Shepard Fairey, but it's like Shepard Fairey's an artist. If like you hire Shepard Fairey to do your thing, it's Shepard Fairey, not you. So in the case of where we're talking about with design, usually the designer's hand should be fairly invisible.
I love that point and that distinction between kind of a designer versus an artist. And so I would love to hear your take on Super 7 and sort of like now that you're at this point where, you're working with a bunch of licenses, you have original stuff going. What's your overarching philosophy for your brand and the toys that you're making?
There's the oversimplification of this, which is there is the manifesto, if anybody's ever seen the manifesto for the brand, which is, I don't have it completely memorized because I've got it typeset for so many years, I don't have to do it. But the version of it is, we grew up on punk rock, skateboarding, science fiction, giant monsters, robots, and rebellion. No one made what we wanted, so we made it ourselves. It's got a lot of attitude, and it's in its true essence, it's really about any subculture that you grew up on. Like that's happened to be mine. But if you grew up playing D&D and riding BMX bikes, all of us, at least in my world, we were all on the outside edges of mainstream pop culture. There was very few times that we were in the center. We were usually on the fringes. In a pre-internet world, it was very difficult to find those fringes, and you really had to search them out. In a post-internet world, the beautiful part is you can find those people very quickly. And so all of a sudden, like a company like Super7 could not have existed pre-internet. Or if it did, it would have been incredibly small. But now, if I'm talking about something obscure, I'll use our mascot, Mummy Boy. For me to make it in San Francisco, I might find 20 people that are willing to buy Mummy Boy, but that's it. I can't find enough people to survive. But with the invention and the adoption of the internet, well, there's 20 guys in San Francisco, and there's 20 guys in LA, and there's 10 guys in Seattle, and there's 10 guys in Oklahoma City, and 20. By the time I pile them all up, I got 1,000 guys or girls. I don't want it to sound wrong. I'm trying to use it as a generalization. But there's 1,000 people. Now, if I've got 1,000 customers, I can build and make this stuff. I can take something that is on the periphery that normally would not be made, and I can make it because I can interact with all the people that are interested in it that are not simply in where I can reach out my arms and hands and touch them. And it makes you sound really old when you talk about what life was like pre-internet and post-internet, but it is a radically differentiating democratization of what can happen in the world, because so much of this stuff was literally impossible. Your friend's band would press 500 7-inches. You'd sell 100 in your town. You'd sell another 100 or 200 to a distributor, sell 500, and you'd have 200 in your basement because there was never anybody else to get rid of them. Well, later, now it's like, oh, they're gone. They're gone in 3 days. That the internet has made that much more possible. They've made companies like us exist. So in our infancy, if you will, what we really did was talk about what we wanted as collectors. What did we want to have? All right, I love that, so I'm going to go make that. And we were fairly limited to that. And that's still a fair guiding principle. But it's like, oh, they made this in 3 inches and they made this in 6 inches, but they never made it in 5 inches. Well, let's go make it in 5 inches. Like, what are those collection fillers that we wanted? And as we got more experience, as we got better, we started thinking about it bigger. Like, oh, what if we actually made up our own kind of format for a toy? Or what if we made up our own license? Or what if we also made toys? What if we opened our own store? What if we did this? It's like, maybe we could do more. Maybe we could do more. And it was a 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, but you lost one, you're back to 3. But 3 + 3 doesn't really equal 6, it equals 4, but you're still ahead. So 4 + 4 = 6, 6. Well, we slid back to 5, 5 + 2. It was this very slow, methodical thing. So if somebody has no idea who I am, which is most everyone in the world, and they look up Super7 and they go, oh my God, you guys are huge. It's like, yes, but we also have been doing this now for 23 years. Most people have only heard of us in the last 4 or 5 years, but we've been doing it for 23 years. And sort of like being a skater or being a punk rocker, like I have no experience in this. I just started doing it. And if you do a thing for a while, all of a sudden you are that thing. Like you want to be a skateboarder, you just start riding and you become one. No one needs to tell you you're it. Like we just started making toys and we weren't a toy manufacturer. We just were some people making some toys and figuring it out. And then one day you wake up and you're like, no, you're a toy manufacturer. In fact, Hybrid Design, my design studio, has a monograph coming out next year. 99% of the people in the world have no idea I ever had a career in graphic design. I'm the toy guy. It's hilarious, but it's also, who cares? What does it matter? I just like making stuff. And this happens to be the version of making stuff that I'm making right now. I totally lost track of your question, though.
It's all good. So did I. And I think like where you went with all of this is so fascinating. And the first vinyl toy I ever bought was actually the Japantown Super7 store back when I was in San Francisco. So thank you for that. But
Early 2000s, for those
yep,
on the record, there you go.
yep,
Opened in 2003, moved to Upper Haight in 2008. So somewhere between 2003 and 2008.
definitely. Probably 2006, I think, is when I snagged one. But I'd love to hear your take on creating your own toy line and then working with licensed properties because I think that's a big thing that I've seen personally as a creative of like, oh, like it feels really hard to create your own IP and your own universe and kind of build that as opposed to maybe starting with getting a license and building stuff in my style with that. Like, do you have any thoughts that you could share with other creatives around that dichotomy of like, do I build the next big thing maybe, or do I go with something that I know there's already a fandom around?
I think there's no one wrong answer to that. It's like, what do you want to make? People often come to me and ask, they want advice about a toy that they want to make. And what I always tell them is if it goes terrible and you've got 250 of these in your basement, if you have 250 of something that you made because you thought somebody else was going to like it, and it was like, you'd done your market research and this is what the customer wanted or whatever, and you hate it, you're going to be miserable. If you make 250 of the thing that you absolutely love and no one gets it, and you walk down to your basement and you got 250 of these and you go, no one bought it, but I love this thing, then it was all worth it. And so that's the first part is like, what do you want? I don't care what somebody else wants, what you think is going to sell. None of that matters. None of it matters. Theoretically, down the road, you have to take it into context. Like, don't go spend $1 million on making, something ridiculous that 2 people want. But you really focus on what you want. When I talk about creatives, we're in a different place now, 23 years on. But, for the first 16 years or so when I wasn't getting paid, it's like, this may not work and it's okay if it doesn't work. I'm not making it to live off of. I'm making it because I want it. And I'm hoping other people will want it too, and then as you get further and further and further along, that certain things if we go back to the heady vinyl days, there's characters that I designed that I was convinced were going to be hits that were tanks. There are characters that I made where I'm like, I really don't care. This one's not going to work. And then it turns out to be a hit. You never know. There's definitely been a couple times where we've made toys where we've said, well, this has worked and this has worked. Well, why don't we put these together? And then it's done terribly. And then even we're embarrassed to look at it. Where there's toys, like I said, that we've made that have done terrible. And I'm like, I love that toy. I'm bummed that no one bought it, but I love it. So going back to your question, which was about licensing or this, the first thing is, I'm telling you right now, nothing you ever design is the next big thing. One or two people out there get that. That's it. Like, it's not just for the sake of easy math here. It's not us. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be the next big thing. But if you make something that 250 people get into and love, are enough to give you 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, whatever that price is, dollars for it, and put it in the shelf because they love looking at it, how rad is that? How amazing is that? You have won. Now, are you making a living at it and, buying boats? No. But that's also incredibly unrealistic to expect. So first, let's come back down to normal and talk about what we're making and why you're making it. If you're making it because you want to be famous or you want to get rich or you want to do this, like maybe it'll work out for one guy, but it's not going to work out. That's not why people buy it, and they can smell that inauthenticity on it no matter what. The bad analogy that I always use is Van Gogh's Starry Night is an amazing painting, but it's a shitty coffee mug. There's an appropriateness and an authenticity that people can smell and see. Like, why is the Mona Lisa so revered? Is it because it's painted technically superior to other paintings? No. But there's something that Da Vinci painted into that, some meaning, some emotion as he was doing it, that strikes people that don't know the story. They just see it and they're struck by it. There's something intangible there. And whether that's if we're talking about toys here, you guys specifically asked about toys, there's something intangible. If you have decided you're going to make your version of Captain Marvel and it's the most awesome version and you love it so much, somebody's going to be able to see that in it. Whether that sells or not, it's a different story, but there's an authenticity there. But if you go, oh, this was popular and this was popular, and girls are really having a moment, so I should make a Captain Marvel, like they're also going to smell that. They're just going to be like, yeah, don't need it, don't care. And you're like, oh, that didn't work. I guess girls aren't hot. And it's like, it's not that. It's that you didn't do it because you loved it. I feel like that is the first thing. So coming back to that, then mechanically a host of issues that go into it. Getting licenses is very difficult. It's very expensive. There's a lot where it might have been easier 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago when we were doing it to get into that world than it would be now. It's also, I can say it for us as well. It can also be a crutch because you're using somebody else's vernacular that they've spent the last 20 or 40 or 60 years banging into the pop culture of people. So when they get it, they're like, oh, I like Captain Marvel. Oh, here's somebody drew their version of it. I like that too. Are they buying it because they liked your version or they just like Captain Marvel? Well, you can argue it the same way. I would say with the characters that we've designed, whether it's the mascots like Mummy Boy and Bat Boy and Rose Vampire and some of those, or the worst and the weirdest and stuff like that, it's, we never trying to make it super popular. It was just like, I just want to make this and then we'll see if anybody comes along for the ride. But if you give yourself the opportunity, it's the what's the bad Michael Jordan quote, you miss all the shots you don't take. You just keep doing it. And sooner or later, you find a groove, people find you, or you come up with something that works. I have gone around and about, but I'll bring it back to the perfect example, which is Mummy Boy, which is our mascot. It's probably the most popular character I've designed. For anybody listening, since this is a listening version right now, you can Google him, but it's a little sort of 1950s style advertising mascot of a mummy with a big smiling face, and he's missing his right arm and there's just a little bone sticking out. And he's super cute. But the whole point is like, we were Super 7 at the time was really heavy. We were doing a lot of work with Godzilla and Toho, making vinyls there. We were making a lot of our own toys that were a little bit more monster centric because I love monsters. And I was like, I want when we moved the store from the initial location in Japantown to the larger location in Japantown, I was like, I want a 1950s mascot for the store. Like, what's my Bob's Big Boy? What's my Jolly Green Giant? What's my Ready Kilowatt? What's my Alka-Seltzer guy? Like, what's that? And so I drew a whole bunch of stuff and I came up with this Mummy Boy idea. And I was like, he's so cute. I was like, no one of these gnarly Godzilla monster dudes that I'm selling vinyls to right now is going to want Mummy Boy. But I don't care. I'm going to make him because it's literally my 1950s mascot. And then we made him and he's the most popular character we've ever had. Like I never would have guessed that character would resonate so deeply. Then I'd have other characters like there's one called Visaghost, and then that I was like, oh man, banger. It's like this ghost silhouette. It's in the same vernacular, but all the bones are on the outside. And the whole story was like, instead of he's dead, he's a ghost, but instead of wearing his emotions on his sleeve, he's got the whole thing. And I was like, oh, this is going to slay. It's a skeleton, basically, in vinyl, and we can do colorways of it. Who's not going to buy that? The answer is exactly. It did not do well. But I love that character. And then so much so that I made a variant of it called Monoghost later with alternate head sculpts. And there's a few guys out there that really like it, but it never performed well. But I don't care. I love that character. He's so much fun. So part of it is just you put yourself out there. You never know what's going to work for other people. But if you make what you like, you're always going to be happy with it, whether it sells or not. That sort of answered your question, I think. Sort of.
I want to move on to what inspires you and get into the cool conversation we were having beforehand. But this is probably the most timely conversation I've ever had with anyone in my life. And I know there's other people who are going through the same thing. And this has been pretty fucking awesome. Conversation. I'm noticing a trend and I want to stick on it. It goes back to grandma going, well, you're like, you're just doodling. And grandma goes, there's a place to go with that. There is. Like, you have all these, as you were telling your origin story, and now happy accidents and just doing what you like and feeling good in what you're doing and no real set plans. Does that make sense the way I state that?
It's not that there's no set plans. Clearly, to execute, you've got to have a plan. But I think
Correct.
the point is there's no set expectations. So I come back to early on in the design studios days, especially you remember in the early aughts, everybody was making silk screens. We made shitloads of silk screens, because people love buying silk screens. Somewhere along the way, people said we have enough silk screens. But I was always like, okay, if I'm going to go get this poster of this design that we did silk screened, it is, back to the same thing. It's $300. Let's for easier math, we're going to say it's $400 to get 100 of them silk screened. Okay, well, I sell them for $40 each. So if I sell 10, I got my money back, right? We broke even. It all depends on your perspective from that point forward. If I sold 10, I look at it as I sold 10 people paid me $40. They like Nard enough to pay me $40. I got all my money back. Even if I have 90 in a drawer taking up space, didn't lose anything, and I gained people buying my stuff. I have won. Because if you had told me, if I walked down the street and said right now to you, for free, I'll silk screen a poster of yours and give you 10. You'd be like, all right, cool. I just got 10 free posters. How is that any different? Most people look at that and said, I paid $400. I only sold 10. I barely made my money back. And I got 90 sitting in the basement. This is just, it was a complete failure. And that's the point of difference. Like, if you view that as a failure, you never do it again. I view it as, I got all my money back. 10 people even bought it. I'm going to try it again. And I'm going to try it again. This one may not work. This one may not work. But all of a sudden, this one works. I sold all 100 of them. Now I can make 10 posters. And then, or whatever. And it's just, if your perspective is, you go into it like, I went out, I silk screened 100 of these. if I don't sell all 100 or 90 out of the 100, it's a failure, then of course you're going to fail. And that's why you don't get anything done. So it's not that I don't have a plan. It's just that I'm okay with the expectation of success is different. And that was something I learned growing up in the punk scene. I hate to always reference it, but it's like there was no expectation that you were going to make money. You weren't. So if my friend wanted to put out a record for his band, it was going to cost him $500. If we could sell 200 of those for $250 each, we broke even. But even if we lost $100 and it only cost us $100 to put out a fucking record, I'd do that every day. Well, I couldn't afford it every day, but the whole point is that's a great deal. For $100, you can get 200 records and give them away to anybody you wanted. Oh man, let's do it. Like, why wouldn't you do that? But it's a perspective shift. So in Super 7, in the growing of Super 7 over the years, it was, I had a job. That was my graphic design job. All the rest of this was for fun. At a certain point, it gets to a size where you have to take it more seriously, but it's still in that same thing. Like if you're going to make a product that you want people to buy, you have to define your expectation of success and you have to have a clear plan to get there. So my clear plan is how I get it done. And my expectation of success is if we aren't losing any money, in fact, we're making money, even if it's a little bit, like we're winning and growing. Like this is great. And like I said, for me personally, it took me 16 years to have a full-time job doing that. Now, there are other people that had a full-time job doing that along the way. As it got bigger, there were 4, 5, 6 of them. But it's like, it's the same thing. Like I didn't go to school for toy design. I was like, how hard can this be? Like it's hard, but I can figure it out. Like, look, I don't like to fix my car, but I know a guy that dropped out of high school can figure it out. So I know that if I need to, I can figure it out. And I'm not to disparage anybody that works on cars. That sounds nasty. It's not supposed to. But the point is, all this shit you can figure out. You just got to put in the time. And same thing. Becoming a toy designer, I just started doing it. And next thing you know, people are like, oh, Brian designed toys. It's like, I do? Oh, I guess I have. I've done 5 or 6. Like that's enough to become the guy. And then when all of a sudden, when you've done 20 or 40, you're like, oh no, you're the company. I'm like, I'm the company? When did that happen? So it really comes back, I think, in the beginning for all of this is just like, I think everybody goes in, not everybody, the majority of people go in having an expectation of success that's unrealistic. And then secondarily, what I see for a lot of people is that they're very concerned with the perception of it. Like, okay, yeah, we only sold 10 and the other 90 are sitting in the flat file. Wow, that didn't work out so well, did it? That fucking worked out great. I got all my money back. I'm going to try it again. Well, if you're not embarrassed by that, then you win. But if you're like, oh God, everybody thinks I'm a failure, then you cower away. Like, I don't care if you don't like, Christ's sake, I collect toys. Do you really think that I'm worried that whether or not you think it's cool or not? I dealt with that when I was like 22, trying to date.
That was fucking awesome.
It's so good. I think really why that resonates so much with us, Brian, is just this mindset that you have around reframing and managing expectations of success to a point that you're like, yeah, I'm still moving forward, even if you're taking, especially in the beginning, very incremental steps. And everyone wants overnight success when they don't realize it takes 23 years, whatever, to get there. How, even with this idea of managing those expectations, I'm sure there's definitely setbacks, or it's like you print the 100 posters and then maybe one sells and then you're like, oh, I actually lost a bunch of money now. And so could you maybe share how you work through maybe some of the more difficult road bumps that you've hit along the way? Or has it been just this constant punk rock mentality of, let's just keep going a little bit and we'll get there?
Both are true and both are untrue at the same time because depending on the moments. I will say as Super 7 got bigger and the numbers get bigger, like it's easy to be when it's just you and your buddy and something goes a little sideways, say your budget's $1,000 and it's off by 10%, you can find $100. When the budget's $10,000 and it's off by 10%, you're like, ooh, $10,000 is a lot of money. And then when the budget's $1 million and it's off by 10%, you're like, oh, we're in a world of hurt here, you know? So as it's scaled, it's definitely become much more difficult. You have to be much more on top of your game. And that's what it's an interesting thing. I'll use it as a parallel to the design studio. Very early on, we met with, we were at a convention back when people used to do, they're not conventions for graphic design. They'd have conferences. That's right. It's a much more official version. It's not a convention. This is, you know, it's a conference. We're at a design conference and we're talking to a bunch of other designers that had small studios that were our elders, if you will. And they were like, you know, 8 and under. 8 and under is the spot. 8 and under, it's really good. You can do good work. You can be in control of what you're doing. You don't have to sort of play the game. You can really be profitable as well as maintain creative control. And then they said anywhere from 8 to 25 is the death zone because your expenses rise in tandem with your income. So you're working harder, you're doing all this other stuff, and it's just brutal. And if you go 25 and over, then it separates again. And that's when you start getting into agency world and they get really profitable and everything else because you've just simply got enough people that you can churn work. And there's an applicability from that to even what we do, which is just sort of, you know, when you're doing a lot of this stuff, it's like glamour idea is always the big studio, you know, the big company with all this stuff. And it's like, well, actually, the sweet spot, like the best version of that milkshake is, you know, a small group of people doing something very specific at a high level and are profitable. You're either that, like there's a famous story about when Pixar was sold to Disney, is Pixar had getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And they'd put out one movie every 2 years. And they had, you know, it was a big group of people. They had the campus, the whole thing. And when they decided to sell to Disney was like, we want to do more than one movie every 2 years. Like for us to do that, us to like to scale to where we are now, to do one movie every year, to essentially double. Like if you're talking about the thing earlier, like 1+1=2, 2+2=4, 4+4=8. When you're at 288 and you need to jump to, you know, what is that? 560, I don't know. My math has failed me because I only know it in like old cartridge systems where you would add memory to your computer. So I know you go from you go to 128 to 256, and that goes to 512, that goes to 1024. I chose a number that wasn't that, so I don't know how to double it. So I don't know how to double 288. It's 600 something. No, it's not. It's less than that. It's 1224. So it's 576. There you go. I figured it out. But if I had just gone with my base numbers on my computer memory expansion pack from the 80s, I would have got it right. Anyways, you try to make those big jumps. You cannot do it with the resources you have. It is literally physically impossible. And so much so that a studio that has made multiple Toy Stories and Finding Nemo and all these movies that are revolutionary is like, for us to go to the next level where everybody in this company says they want to do more, they want to do a movie every year, and they want to do some shorts, means we got to go to Disney because that's the only person that has enough money to do it. Like they had this town hall where they talked about it, and there was this initial sort of revolt of like, how dare you sell us out to the enemy? And it was like, well, what do you guys want? Do you want to scale back or do you want to grow into doing more? So I use that in context when we talk about all this stuff here, which is same thing, like whether it's your design studio or whether it was Super7, there's these moments where you either are going to be like, hey, we're going to keep it tight, small, really good, really influential, but the sphere of influence is only this big. Or we're going to take the leap and see if we can land on the other side without dying. It's like Indiana Jones, where he's like, you know, he's got a leap of faith from the lion's mouth there, you know, and it's like, it's either going to work or it's not, and you never quite know. So if we talk about that in Super7's world, there's definitely been multiple times where we've had to take that leap of faith. If we talk about, I think we were 10 or 11 years in when we did the Super Shogun Stormtrooper. It, I don't know if obviously it's not behind me, it's over there, but it's a Shogun Warrior for those that are old enough to remember it. So it's 2 foot tall and Stormtrooper. So as a kid, I had Star Wars figures that were 3 3/4 inches tall. And the kid down the street had the 2 foot tall Shogun Warriors. I wanted a 2 foot tall Star Wars figure that shot its fist. Didn't happen. So I was like, we had the opportunity to make that happen. And we literally bet the farm. Like, either this figure works and we get our money back and make some money and keep moving forward. If it doesn't work, we go out of business. But I'm making a thing I wanted to have since I was 7. Because same thing, like if you were smart, if anybody was here from marketing, they'd be like, well, the most popular Star Wars character is Darth Vader. Second most popular is Boba Fett. Third is Luke Skywalker. Like, Stormtrooper's down the list. Why are you making a Stormtrooper? It's like, because I want a Stormtrooper. That's why. So, we've had a bunch of those moments. We've had obviously things that have not gone as well as we had planned, but we've had more. It's been a little less of like, oh, this didn't work out so right. How do we sort that? That sort of becomes a day-to-day. We've had more of a couple moments where it's like, what do we believe and what do we want? And we're going to have to kind of put it on the line. And either it's going to work or it's not going to work. And we had a really great run. Same thing. Not to sound super dire, but like, if this all goes belly up tomorrow and people decide they don't want toys anymore, fuck, man. Do you see what I got to do for 23 years? That's bonkers. We won. That's the core of it. People get caught up in not focused on the amazing things that we're going to do. So if you're talking about it from a graphic design perspective, which we may have started with, or a number of other things, it's like, you get to draw pictures all day. Like, really, dude? And right now, you're probably working from home. Like, let me get this straight. You're working from home, drawing pictures. Like, you won. You're not having to hang sheetrock. Somebody has to do that, and that's a thankless job. But man, we're in great places, and you can make it better. Like, that was. So I'll go backwards, back to the old Nike days. I started at Nike when I was 25. Like, I was a baby. And so we got the kind of cruddy projects because people that had more experience there were like, I don't want this project. The dog project, and my wife Dora really set this one on fire. The dog project was the t-shirt mailer. What the t-shirt mailer was, Nike and most large companies work on their apparel 18 to 24 months in advance because they got to get bought, sold in, and literally we got to manufacture a couple million units of this and get it over. It takes a long ass time. In that time, trends change. So the t-shirt mailer was this thing they would drop in twice a year where they would update like 36 new t-shirts based on more modern styles. They would print the blanks ahead of time and ship them over to the States, and it's sort of like, quick strike t-shirts, if you will. And I mean, come on, it's a catalog for quick strike t-shirts. Like, this is a dog of a project. And we get it. And they're like, well, what's the printing budget? Like, it's got a full printing budget, just like any other project, because it's got to go get printed. And we're like, all right, and the creative director is just like, who the fuck cares? Just get it done. Not the creative director, but the client doesn't care. We're like, so we can print anything we want, right? More or less, because no one cares. It's the dog project. So, okay, cool. I think the first one that Dora did was she did like spot metallics on a folder that folded out and then slipped inside like a static envelope bag with like a silk screen. Like, really cool, especially in like 2001, 2002. And they're like, of course, the clients used to nobody putting any effort into it. Instead, you made it amazing. They're like, wow, that's awesome. Which gets into a separate conversation about how you work with your clients. So first off, that's awesome. Goes off, gets printed, gets done. Everybody comes back like, that was a cool project. Where did that come? And by 3 seasons in of doing the mailer, of course, the client immediately comes back to Dora, like, make that again, because it was also beautiful. It generated sales, made me look good. Everything happened. So come straight back to Dora. after 3 mailers are out, like it is the hottest product in the studio. The best project you can get is the mailer. And all the senior people want it, but the guy's not giving it to them. He wants Dora to do it again. And it's the same thing. It's like your view of your limitation of your job is what prevents you from moving along. It's like the project never had the limitations. People viewed it as limitations. Somebody else walks in and goes, shoot, this is the greatest thing. And going back to where I was going back with your clients, I'm on a real tangent now. What we always used to say, what we still say here is that clients don't know how to speak design. I don't think that that's anything revolutionary. But if they knew how to speak design, they'd already have what they needed. They wouldn't need you. Your job is not to be the designer. Your job is to be the translator. You need to understand. So when they say, like, we had a really great project once where we got briefed by a client at Nike where they needed a catalog. It's about this. You don't know how to describe it because you don't speak design. So I have to translate down what it is. And what we ended up doing with this project, I'm on a real tangent here, is we ended up saying, all right, what's your print budget? And, had a decent print budget, not a massive print budget, but a decent print budget to make a catalog, a small run catalog. And we said, all right, instead of that, here was one, we had to show up to the meeting with a catalog because they asked for it. But then we said, here's what we think would work better because you told us this is what you want. You want this woman to pick it up, study it, possibly keep it, put it in her bag like it's not disposable. So instead of like what people used to call the little black book, Nike's color is red, so we made the little red book. And we said, you've got X amount of dollars for printing. That would have covered a 16-page catalog. We said, instead, we're going to make this book quarter size, so slightly bigger than handheld, but can fit in your bag. But we're only going to print one sheet of color. And it is going to be, it'll be about the shoes. And then everything else, we're going to take all the rest of the budget and we're going to print one color on uncoated stock. And we made a notebook. We made a 260-page notebook, which it was a section of like calendar, a section of notes, a section of planners, a section of, everything you would have in a notebook. And those were all different colored stocks with one color ink on them. And the section dividers in between them were 4 pages, like one, you cut out small signatures out of the press sheet. That was each shoe, the story behind it, care, collection, like everything. So, and then it was foil stamped on this really beautiful red paper because foil stamping is cheaper than printing. And then the whole thing was bound. So when you picked it up, it would be a notebook that you'd be like, oh, this is a $20 or $30, like, beautiful notebook. But instead, it's the free giveaway, like the catalog. Cost the same amount to print this thing as it did to print this catalog. But this one, like, not only do they feel like they're stealing it, but they're never going to throw it away. And when they look at it, or if they use it, they're constantly reading about the product. So now we have actually, as designers, done a better job of you achieving your goals. But it's our job as designers, I'm on the graphic design side now, to translate what your client is trying to tell you, not simply respond to the brief. The response to the brief is their best guess at what they think they need based on what they have seen and experienced in the world, rather than the true goal. And so you've got to dig in there and retranslate the true goal. Then you design to the goal. If you do that, they're successful. They understand that it's not just like, well, there's a bunch of white space on this page. Why are we wasting space when we could have a logo there? They're like, oh, I get it. Now I understand what you did. It solved my problem. Design solves my problems and helps me execute. Oh, now I have much more trust in what you're doing. And you build that rapport and that relationship, and everyone becomes more successful. That is the goal of the designer, or the role of the designer. That went from toys to notebooks in, I don't know.
In one flesh swoop, but it's all the same because I use this word constantly at work and constantly when I tell people. The trick of a good designer is empathy. And you just described design empathy. And it's the same thing with your toys.
Well, it's the same, but boys are no different than graphic design.
Correct.
And you say empathy, and it's the same thing where, anytime I hear somebody saying, my client's an idiot or they just don't get it, I'm like, well, then you have either not solved their problem, because if you solve their problem, they would get it, or you're a bad communicator. There's also jerks in there. That's another column. But for the most part, it's really fitting into the first two things. In coming back to something we said at the very beginning, whether it's graphic design and you're talking about that, it's like, what's the idea? What's the concept? Where are we going? How is that person's eye traveling up across the page? When it's how does it make you feel? When I'm talking about a toy or a product that we're making, it's still the same thing. What's the first thing you see when you see it? How does it make you feel? Like all of those things, balance, symmetry, asymmetry when appropriate, all those things fall into, it's the same thinking. It can be a shoe, it can be a space, it can be a toy, it can be a piece of printed material. It's all the same thing. And then you dial up and down the elements that are important. Like, same thing. If it's a t-shirt, you need to dial up the visual punch so it hits you in the face first, and dial down maybe some of the other stuff. But it's still the same critical thinking. It's agnostic of product. Design thinking has nothing to do with the medium involved. So I don't think I've answered a single question straight that you've asked me yet, though. I think every single question you've asked me, I have taken the car off the road, down a ravine, crashed into a couple trees, come up the other side and go, it's all good, right, dude?
It is all good because everything you've shared, I think, is so important for creatives who are looking to monetize their craft. I think this design thinking aspect and balancing that between what you love, and I wish we had more time. We definitely need to get you back on the show for multiple
To
episodes.
actually answer the questions we're asking you.
Not
I want
at
to talk
all.
about movie and toys, and we never got to them.
That's a whole other
Another
conversation of just
episode.
like whether of Chris talking about things he likes and loves that Brian also likes and loves and things that he's made. But Brian, where can people find out more about you, about the work you do, all of that? Give us the links for people to find you.
The links at the brand level, if you're looking for toys, retro nostalgia, apparel, all that other stuff, it's at super7.com or Super7 on the Instagram. And because I am older, people, we technically exist on other platforms. I've never been there to see if it actually exists or not. It is a tree falling in the forest. I don't know. We're on TikTok apparently, but I couldn't tell you if it was true or what we're doing. I know it's not significant because most of our customers are my age, so that means we're all on Instagram, with a side of Facebook. But there's that. On the graphic design side, you can go to hybrid-design.com. And if you want to actually see weird collections, pictures of things I've collected, then you go to at Brian Flynn with an I, BRIANFLYNN on Instagram. And it's, like I said, it's mostly very inane and will not be of merit to anyone. It's like, I came here for design and all I got was, look at this pressing where the printing is off by 1/16 of an inch. This one came from Czechoslovakia versus Romania. It took me 22 years to find it, kind of thing. It's going to be it's a lot of that. I apologize in advance, but not with any sincerity.
Embrace the nerdness. Embrace it.
It's the same thing. It's like, it's pictures of records and skateboards and toys and
Yes.
that's about it. Like, this is the cultural zeitgeist of a 50-year-old.
As a man in his 50s, I just want to add before I ask the last question, send my appreciation. I needed to hear what you were saying today. And I think every so often, even at 50, we still need to hear it. So thank you. How we love to end the show is we always give our guests the final words. So the floor is yours.
The reality is, if anybody is here, if you're in the world of design, if you've gotten this far with it, you have the opportunity to make your life whatever you want it to be. But at the same, like, you can design your life. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And somebody might say, well, there's not that job opportunity. There's not this or not that. Fine. Your job opportunity is not there. I don't expect your work to fulfill your creative desires. Like, you do that stuff outside of work then. Like, we talk about, I think Barbara Kruger, I saw her speak once a long time ago, because as much as I'm old, she's even older than me now, and you go, oh, Barbara Kruger, she's super famous. She's like, fuck you. I worked at a magazine and a newspaper laying out a newspaper for like 15 years before I became a famous artist. Like, and I don't get any money when that thing sells. Like, give me a break. It's the same thing. It's like if you expect your job to fulfill all of your creative impulses, it's never going to happen. So start building your own stuff. But if you have the expectation of that you're doing it for yourself and just having fun with it, you will never have a bad day. Well, I mean, you'll have a bad day just in terms of like regular old people bad day stuff, but you'll never be unsatisfied. And I see it so much where people are like, oh, I'm just not getting all the creative resolution I want out of my job. And I'm like, that's not your job's function. You're working for somebody else there. You can get some of it there, hopefully, but you need to be doing stuff on the side. You need to be doing the stuff that makes you feel great here and there. And if you do that, it may eventually turn into something. If you don't, it's not going to happen. I'm going to squirrel it around sort of to a similar thing that when I talk to students. Students will come in and they'll have their portfolio and they'll be ready for a job. And it's like, you went to design school, it was great, fine, wonderful. Their job is to prepare you generally for the world. Hey, here's a website, here's some UI UX, here's some packaging, here's some logos, here's your portfolio that you're trying to get out of school with. And they'll be like, I've done all the work. And I was like, no, you did the bare minimum. That is the bare minimum. And what do you want to do? I want to be a book designer. Okay, well, if you want to be a book designer and your portfolio has 5 logos, 2 UI UXs, and a website, you're never going to get the job. The guy that's going to get the job is the guy that shows up with a portfolio full of 40 book covers. So if you're not doing what you want, you need to be tailoring your portfolio and doing your work outside of there to create the portfolio of the job you want to get. Because I can infer when I need to hire somebody, I'm looking for a skill set. The book that comes in that shows me that skill set is who gets hired. So you may be the best letterer in the world and I'm looking for a letterer, but you sent me a book that has logos and UI and UX. Well, this other guy sent me a book of lettering. That's who's going to get the job. So whether that's a student or what you're doing at your own regular work, and you can, because I always hear people say, I've got it easy. I've figured it out. It's like, but you have to build the life you want. Create the portfolio for the job you want to get. Go change it. Don't expect your work to magically do it. I'm going to get a book. Oh, this new manager just got hired and they're going to see my creative genius. No, they're not. They're not. It's not what they're there to do. That guy's there to get the work done. He's not there to shepherd you to the next stage of your creative evolution. That's your job. Go do it. Go make it happen. All right. That sounded like a rant, but that's it. It's just like, quit waiting. You have to build your own life. There was no job. Super7 didn't exist. I could never have gotten a job there. And no one would have ever hired me as a toy designer. I didn't get a job at another design studio. I had to make mine. Like, go build your future.
Thank you for joining Rick and myself on another episode of Origins, A Creative Journey, a Designer Con production. Please like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, download and listen to us every place you get your favorite podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Origins, A Creative Journey, all one word. Drop us an email for thoughts, ideas, or maybe somebody you'd like us to interview at dconpodcast@gmail.com. And make sure you join us in Las Vegas for DesignerCon, North America's premier annual design convention. All the information can be found, including tickets, at designercon.com. Till then, enjoy your own creative journey.